of conversation.
Okay, you're right.
Barry, what was it like driving in the early 60s?
Well, it was a lot different then, Trish. They didn't have roll cages. In fact, they didn't even have roll bars at that stage. So it was different with those old cars. Tracks were different, and I think there was a different type of competitor. Since they've brought in roll cages and things like that, which are probably good for the sport nowadays, it did change things throughout the world, and I think it also changed a lot of the competitors.
That rivalry and showmanship seemed to come to the fore then, particularly you and Trevor Morris.
Yes, it did. We were both, there was a lot of other guys around too, but we were pretty much younger people that wanted to win races, and that was about all that mattered. And we still often used to go out and have a drink at night, although we'd usually end up in a fight somewhere, but it was still always, you know.
People saw you as the goodie and the baddie. How did that happen?
Well, Morrissey was really the baddie, but they tried to make me out the baddie. I don't know how that really came about, but it was just one of those things that happened at the time. He was a fierce sort of a guy, but he had different style of driving and everything, and of course we had a big contrast right there on the way we did things. So I always called him a girl and he'd call me a lunatic, and that's about the way we did things, you know. But it was different, and those cars were a lot heavier, and you could bang and crash a lot without too many guys getting hurt, because if you did get upside down in them, usually it was your body that hurt more than the car. And although that was never a part of the thoughts, it was a thing that was sort of built into the whole deal. And I did notice that when they came out with roll cages and everything, I know a lot of guys had gained about 15 mile an hour without really being in control of things. And I think that's why you got to see probably more accidents, because there was a different breed coming into the whole thing, you know.
What was it like with the crowd, the atmosphere like?
Well, that was probably, too, something that kept you on. I must admit, those days when you came to the races, you never ever were conscious of how many people were in the stadium, really. You could only hear the noise, because then you couldn't see them or anything like that. And we weren't really here for the crowd, but in a way, I suppose you were. You could hear them actually roaring above the cars and that, and even in the race. And it did make you think about it, you know. But when you got to the stadium, that was the most unimportant factor of the whole night, was the crowd itself. But I guess everyone did play to them a little bit, you know.
Your career has spanned 3 decades. What keeps you going?
Oh, I like the sport. I like speedway, and it was always, I suppose it's the element of danger in the thing. I don't know. It is a challenge. It's a big challenge, and especially now, equipment's got a whole lot. It's changed a lot now, and using different engines and different cars, and they brake a lot easier. But it's not only you have to have a good drive, you have to have a good car, and that did creep into it in the later part of it. Your equipment would brake a lot easier than it did before. I don't know, I suppose it's wanting to win part of it.
What was your most memorable moment?
Trish, there's been a lot, I don't know. I couldn't really sort that out. If you win a race and you've won it from the back and you've driven hard, that's always something to remember. I don't consider winning a race off the front as neither here nor there. You just go and wait for the next one where you start off the back and win. it's not much good starting off the front. I think it would have to be in Sacramento, although I don't like talking about other speedways other than New Zealand, but Sacramento was probably the hardest year I ever had in speedway.
Why do New Zealanders, why have we taken to speedway?
Kiwis are fairly one-eyed person, I suppose, and they like to see Kiwis win, you know. And when there was overseas competitors like Australians, I'm not putting the Yanks down, but I really feel you have to have Australians in a field because to get that love-hate bit going there, that's, I think, what is missing at the moment, Patricia. There's no bad guys. They're all nice guys nowadays, you know. You've got to have some bad guys in there. And the Aussies were always bad. They still are, even when they play cricket there, you know. We want to see them beat, don't we? With the Yanks, I don't know. They come out, it's all nice country and everything's nice. There's no wild, bad people anymore. Gary Patterson and all them that were around there, he was pretty much an animal, but he was a good race car driver.
So speedway needs the baddies, you think, to rev the crowd up and get everybody in?
Oh, definitely. And you have to let it go a little bit. You can't cripple all that sort of thing. I suppose I shouldn't say too much about it, but I feel what they do nowadays is they take that. The moment you get something going like that, they'll chop it off. And the crowd don't like it, neither do the drivers. There's no rivalry anymore.
And this is causing a bit of a problem in speedway at the moment?
Well, I think so. That's why a lot of us aren't here, because you can't get on with the job like you'd want to. I don't mean you go out there to hurt someone, but it's dirt racing, and it's loose. It's not like racing pavement. You don't go out and on pavement, you've got the car stuck down pretty good, but always on dirt it moves around. There's a lot of movement, and obviously you're going to have some contact. And if you can't have contact, then you can't drive over the edge like you have to do. When you can't do that, of course, you haven't got the spectacle anymore.
How do you feel for the future of the sport in New Zealand?
Oh, I think it'll get going again. It's probably having one of its worst or not so good moments at the time, but we intend to fix that up anyhow.
Thank you. That's great. Stay there.
Okay.
What was the American influence like during that 57 to 67 period?
Yes, that started to bring it alive, Patricia. Starting off with Lau Sachs, as I can remember, and then of course Bob Tattersall. And after that they brought in quite a few at a time, and it was good because we hadn't seen a lot of visitors for quite a while. I'm not sure whether the Australian team came out before that. There was a team of Australians, and I remember that as really setting the place alight. They brought about 5 Australians out here, and that was, in my way of thinking, that was a whole lot better than one American, but it was still good competition, and basically all the cars were pretty much the same. The Yanks came out here and slaughtered us, of course, and it took a year or so to catch up with them, which they've caught up now, obviously, but it did take a little while. The Americans were ahead.
They brought out the very good cars.
Oh yes, they were way ahead of us. They were only things that we dreamed of at that time. And the Aussies came out with some pretty good equipment too, but Kiwi ability beat them.
And just one last question here. Let's talk about this group that you're forming, or Speedway, called the Outlaws.
Yes, that will run under a different organisation, a different deal altogether, different control of Speedway, which is, there is now there's 2 controlling bodies in the country at the moment, so that'll have to sort itself out, Patricia. But yes, we hope to get it back where it was in those days, with a bit of competition and everything like that.
Very good.